So, hello everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today we are going to talk to Miriam, and I'll give just a brief introduction. But we're going to be talking to her specifically about what her experience these last few months has been in China. Well, actually, she went from Europe to China, but she lives and works in China, even though she is a Mexican national. And I had actually hired her way back in 2004, and she's currently managing language education in Guian, which is in South Central China, for lack of a better way of putting it. But it's another one of many cities in China that's huge that you may have never heard of. And and her experience I found is so interesting because I hear so many people who feel that if you live in China, you get no accurate data, or that just I think some of the expectations around what life in China is like don't match what I've seen and know from being there myself, even being with you not too long ago, and then hearing it from you, and particularly seeing you go from the Lunar New Year vacation from Europe, flying back into China after coronavirus had already hit, what that experience was like, and how what you experienced just in that transfer process is still not happening here in the United States. So I just thought it'd be really valuable for people to hear about that, because again, you're a Mexican national, you're not Chinese. There may be people who still think there's some kind of Chinese authority monitoring what you have to say. So you're welcome to say whatever you want. But I was actually surprised even to learn that for us to talk on Zoom, there's no VPN required. You're able to just click on the link. So anyway, welcome, Miriam. It's 8 a.m. here, and it's around 8 or 9 there. I can never remember exactly.
9 p.m.
Yeah, 9:10.
Yeah. Right. So funny about Zoom. Actually, Zoom was free for Chinese people longer than it was for Westerners. Like outside of China, people had to pay, and Chinese people could use it for free. So that's kind of something different. But anyway, coming back to China. So I was actually traveling. I traveled through the U.S. to Mexico in December. And when I was in Mexico, the coronavirus started in Wuhan. You know, I got the news that, there is this epidemic situation happening and so on. And I was like, it's in Wuhan. It's far away from where I live. It's not a big deal. It's probably just a cold. Same idea that everybody got, like, it's in China. You know, it's not going to affect me. So that's how it started. And I actually got to travel back every time I travel back from Mexico, I'm from the north, you know that. And it's easier to go to Arizona than to go from Mexico, go down to Mexico City. So I traveled back from San Francisco. That was no problem. Everything was fine. But the day I got here back January, the first week of January, and then I left a week after to go to Europe. So the day I was leaving, that's when things started getting a little bit out of control and scary here. And they just told me, you're going to be on a plane. You should wear a mask. So I had a meeting in the morning with my coworkers, and then the person from the front desk said, I actually have some masks, take them. So I went to Europe with like 2 masks on my head. I was in a plane just wearing a mask, and it was just a useless mask, you know, just for the fact of wearing something, because it was not a specific medical mask that you need. So anyway, I get to Europe, and of course when you get to Europe.
Was everyone else on the plane wearing one too?
Asians were.
Yeah.
Non-Asians were not. And once you get to Europe, people start staring at you because you're wearing a mask, which, you know, like, of course, I just didn't wear it anymore. I was there and I was traveling and I had so much fun. So while I'm in Europe, things start getting out of control in China, and then you start getting all the news that you can see people, you know, like with the hazmat suits, like it's the end of the world, scary movie, pandemic going on. And I was in constant communication with the people that live here, and they told me, yes, we are in lockdown, we cannot go out, we should be quarantined. The only time we can go out is to get our groceries, and then there is someone at the front gate register who goes in and who goes out. So in case that there is an outbreak of the virus, they will know who could be under in that window of time who could be infected, which I think it's very efficient. So I know for Western countries, especially the US, Mexicans don't care so much, to be honest, but in the US and in England, because I was having communication with some friends from England as well, they were saying, oh, the Chinese are not respecting your freedom and your rights. And I just thinking, it's not about that. It's not about your freedom and your rights. It's about making sure that everyone's safe. And I think that's very important. So that happened. And I used to stay in constant communication with my friends that were in China at the moment. And they were just telling me, we're just bored. We're at home. We cannot go out, and that's it. But nobody was mistreated or nothing bad happened. So when it was about time to come back, and then the outbreak started. My flight got canceled from Beijing to Guiyang, and I didn't want to be stranded in Beijing. I was supposed to come back on February 7th, I think. And then my flight got canceled. So I tried to contact the airline, and of course, flights were getting canceled everywhere or changed and so on. So it was impossible to contact the airline. So I just decided to stay. And I said, I just told my friends, and you know about this, I told my family that I went to the Air China office and it was closed in Vienna. So I traveled to Frankfurt because I know people there and I could stay with them. And I went to the office in Frankfurt, and they rescheduled my flight for free. I didn't have to pay anything. The only thing is that I had to go back through Vienna, because that was my original origin. And I did. So I had to stay in Europe 2 more weeks that I had planned. And while I was there, all the masks and hand sanitizer and things like this were not available to buy in China, because people just went crazy. They're just stocking and overbuying more than they needed, to be honest, because people, I think, just get a little bit too scared. I guess that's the reason, and they just went to buy more than they actually needed. So the Chinese government controlled this, also the prices. It also happened in the US.
Yes.
If you went to Taobao, which is something like
Amazon,
eBay, Amazon or eBay. Yeah, the prices, you want to buy one mask, and instead of being what used to be, 50 cents, it would be $50 just to buy a better one or whatever. So a lot of those things happen, and the government controlled that a little bit and then did not let this escalate. So it just happened for a few days, which I think is also good, because it's necessary. I feel that at some point people get greedy, and we just think about ourselves, not the community we live in. And that's very scary, but that's very dangerous. So after that, in Europe, the masks also sold out. I was traveling through Prague and Budapest and Frankfurt and Luxembourg, I think. From these different places I traveled, masks were sold out completely. But only in Germany, I could buy 4 at a time. You could not buy more than 4 disposable masks at once. I think it's a similar situation with what happened in China, where they were limiting the amount that you could buy. In China, you could only buy 5 daily, and you had to use your the security number. You have a social security number. Something similar was in China. So if you did not have that number, you couldn't buy more. So that's how they track them. And then after that, I went to Bratislava, and I was able to buy some masks to come back. So I came with 200 masks from Bratislava. I flew from Vienna, and that was fine. And I think that the hardest part during that period, like that week before I came, it was not for me. I didn't feel that I was going to encounter a situation that was not safe. And that's something that I think I told you before, and I told my mom, and I told my friends that I was saying, this is going to get out of China.
Yes. And I remember at that time asking you, hey, aren't you nervous? Don't you want to go back and be with your mom in Mexico? And but you're like, my life is in China. My work is in China. I feel you thought it was, well, go ahead. You say what you said about it.
Yeah. So exactly, everything, I had just been home, and I live in China for 10 years, so I don't really have an everyday life in Mexico. I have my family and I have friends, but they have their own lives. So I see them for the holidays, that's great. But then they go back to their routine, and then I'm just there, floating around. So I needed to come back to my own working environment, to my routine. And it was starting to get a little bit hard for me to be, in a place that I'm not familiar with, to be honest. So I was able to stay with my friends and all, but when the coronavirus started hitting other cities, which was like, when I was traveling from Salzburg to Hallstatt, so just for some, the tourist trip for the frozen villa.
And I told you about that.
Yeah. So while I was there, the driver actually, she lived in Las Vegas, which was completely random. And she was telling me that the village that she lives in, it's between Germany and Vienna, so someplace in that area. And that there were 6 people infected there in an office, but it had not made it to the news. But people in the town knew. And when I heard that I just thought about, the same way it was when I was in Mexico in December. There's like 6 people infected, but it's still under control. There is no big deal. But you never know how this is going to escalate. So when I knew that, I was like, it's going to be, I need to get out of here soon, because we have this sense of freedom. And I think Westerners in general, we abuse it. So in China, people were told, you have to stay in your house, you have to wear a mask, and you can only go out of your house twice a week to get your groceries because you need to stay safe. And people understood that. But I don't want to talk in general about other countries, but I know about Mexico because I talk with my friends. It's like, oh no, it's okay. I'm just going to see my grandma. It's going to be fine. It's not a big deal. And we cannot wear masks because they're on shortage and we need to let them to the doctors. So I understand the point, but it's how we bend the rules the way it fits us. And I think like in the US, you're having protests now, and there are, people getting together. They're, in different cities. Well, I see the news. I don't know exactly what's happening, but I can see people are moving around. Oh, I'm just walking my dog because my dog needs to walk. You're not going to be feeling the same when you're on a bed and you actually get sick. And I understand our need to be out, but nothing's going to happen. And I was talking with one of my friends here. I was just telling them, like, what's the problem of people staying home? Because when we go out, we go to a coffee shop, we're all on our phones playing games and chatting on checking Instagram and using Facebook. It's not like we're actually interacting that much. If you think about it, that's what we do. So what's the point of going out and putting your life under risk? That's just my perception. So anyway.
And I remember at the time you left, I was concerned for you going back in, even though we knew at that point we saw that Italy was a hot spot in February. And I remember specifically the wording you said is you felt like you were going from the most dangerous place to the safest place. And I was staying in contact with you the whole time. Like, well, tell me about the process, flying back in, what you observed in terms of what kind of measures did you see? And the reason I think that's so interesting is when I came back in the country in late March, not one of the things that you saw happen in February when I was coming back into the United States in late March, not one of them, not temperature checks, not masks, no hand sanitizer, nothing. I had all of that with me, but there was nothing required and I wasn't being asked anything. And then when I heard, when you had told me in February, how many times you got checked between when you got on the plane and you went into your apartment. People aren't seeing that here. So they don't know what that's like. So I just thought it'd be interesting if you explain where all they checked you.
So the first thing that happened, it's like, I got to the airport, everything was fine. And then I check in to go to China and everybody's like, are you sure you're going to China? Like, that like you're crazy. And I was like, yes, because they're ahead of the game. This thing already happened there. They already flattened the curve. So it's just, I'm going to be safer there than here. That was the first thing. So I had to explain this to basically everyone that saw my boarding pass, like to the person who sold me the coffee, the person who, security, everyone was like, why are you crazy? So that was the first part. Then we got to the boarding area, and Air China actually closed that area. You know, they used these, belts. So we had to board, and we were just sitting there. The plane was empty. The flights, actually return flights, were about, like 2,000 euros one way, when usually the price is around 500 euros. So the price was very, very high. And I was on the row, on the entire 10 seats. There was one person on the other side, and I was on the other side. So I did not have anyone surrounding me. 3 rows in front of me, behind me, there was another empty row. So I was very lonely on the airplane, which was great, especially traveling overseas.
Sure.
Also, the food that they gave us in the plane, everything was packed, and they had times. So like, let's say, some people will get their food served at, let's say at 1 p.m. and the next people will get their food served at 2. So we will have different times, so people will not be opening and eating and taking off their masks at the same time, which I think is actually a good strategy.
Was everyone asked to wear a mask, and were the flight attendants wearing masks? Were the pilots?
They didn't ask anyone to do it, but everybody was wearing the mask. So I think it just...
Even the flight attendants?
The flight attendants were wearing hazmat suits. So like the whole thing.
I didn't know that. Even in February, they were wearing hazmat suits.
Yes, they were completely covered. They were wearing glasses. So like they were completely covered, and gloves. And they had to change their gloves every once in a while. So I feel bad for them, because that,
that's a lot of work.
That's a lot of work. But at least the plane was kind of empty. So that was on the plane.
And did they take your temperature before you got on?
Yes, but the temperature was checked by the Air China staff. So it was all their deal. I don't know if I have Lufthansa had been different. I don't know, but Air China, that they did all the process.
Did they survey you? Did they ask you any questions?
They asked me questions when I got to China, not when I left.
Like if you felt,
so when I got to China, actually, we had to fill up a form. Like you do the customs and declarations that you're not bringing, plants and animals and whatever. Have you had a cold in the past few days? Have you had a fever in the past few days? You had to answer all this. Have you been close to anyone from Wuhan? Of course, you were going to answer no anyway. But,
right.
I haven't, but I just thinking like, why are you asking me? Like it's not like I'm going to say, yeah, you just came from Wuhan. But, anyway. So that we had to fill this up. So once we landed, you know how it is when you go through immigration, that you have to fill in a form, that the arrival card. At that point, you have to use WeChat, which if you're not familiar with WeChat, if you're not here, it's just like WhatsApp or Facebook or something. So we had to scan a QR code, and you have to register at the airport. When you register there, you get a code. And if you have just traveled from abroad, you can get this code. Is green, you're fine. Yellow is you should be in home quarantine. Orange is you should not be coming in contact with anyone. Red and purple. If you get red and purple, it's either you have the coronavirus, you've been in high risk, and you have to be quarantined in the hospital or in a specific hotel. So those are the colors. If you have orange and yellow, you can still move a little bit, but you have to be careful. So those were the. At that time, I think I got yellow, but I don't really remember.
But that meant you had to go self-quarantine for 2 weeks, which you knew was going to happen going back.
Yes, I knew it was going to happen coming back. But I just had to stay home, but I was not a high-risk person. If I had come from a high-risk location, even in China, then I would have gotten another code. Yes. But I was clear to come to my house.
And so in terms of getting your temperature checked, you didn't just have it checked when you got off the plane.
When I got on the plane, when I got off the plane, when I got through the immigration, and then when I got through security out again, because I had to get out from international to go to domestic flights. When I got into through security to domestic flights, I got to get my temperature check again. And when I boarded my other plane. So it was like 5 or 6
what
times.
What about when you got to Guian? Were there people at the front of your building? See, we don't have that at all. We don't have that at all. And I've been to your building, and I know there's not normally somebody there. So that means that China pulled together the resources.
Yeah, my building was closed. My community, the main gate was locked, and there was just the one
entry point,
the small door to go through. And before I got to my building, I had to register. I had to show my passport when I landed, where I came from. They gave me a thermometer, and I had to measure my temperature on my own every morning and every afternoon, and write it on a just a paper, a form. And I had, after a week, the person who was in charge of my community to do this work, checking everyone, he came after a week to see my form. He took it, he took a picture.
Did he come to your apartment? He came actually to your apartment to do that?
He just knocked at my door, and he was staying outside of my apartment on my door, but at my, by the door, and I was just filling everything, giving it to him. He took a picture of me, and then he just left. So everything was fine.
Have you had to show your QR code to anyone on your phone? The QR code?
Not because I didn't get out. So after that, that's when I started to use my QR code. While I was in my apartment, I didn't even know when the color changed because I wasn't leaving. So I got, in China, deliveries are, so easy. We get everything delivered. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So I got here and I got.
It's like here. And I should just point out, so for example, like, while we have things like Grubhub and Uber Eats, in China, everything, like even buying a purse or glasses or anything can be brought to you that day for pennies. Yeah. So you're already set up for that, for deliveries and not having to get out much.
Yeah. So it didn't really affect my lifestyle as much. It was for me just like a very, very long weekend, I guess. Mm-hmm. So I got to do some crafts. I've always liked doing crafts and so on. So I was home and I got, things delivered to color and things like this. So it was okay. I was just going to the door, getting my stuff and coming back. So that was not a problem. I was baking, I was cooking, like what everybody did at the beginning of the quarantine. So after 2 weeks, and I was able to actually see my friends. They will come to the main gate. I handed them the masks, some masks that I brought from Europe, and I gave them to them, and some souvenirs and whatever, and they left. So that was fine. It was not bad. I could see them, but I know I was a person of risk. Sorry, I got a message. So that's why I didn't want to, put anybody else in danger, because I don't know what happened on the plane I was in. So from Vienna to Beijing was okay, but from Beijing to Guian, there were a lot of people on the plane. So that was at that point. And then after that,
and how long were you? So you did the 2 weeks of quarantine, and then yes. I remember, I feel like it feels like a long time ago to me, where you were already kind of back to normal life, and you were going to restaurants, eating with your friends in China, not wearing a mask. And we were totally on lockdown. And I was looking at all your posts going, oh my God, I can't believe that you're already free. And we're still every state is obviously handling this very different. But China at that point had almost no cases. And I don't even remember if Guian had
Guian had very low cases from the beginning. I think there were 4 deaths in the entire state, which is very low. I would be lying. I don't remember the exact data, but it was very, very low. And at that point, I was still thinking that this was all fake, because I don't know anyone in China who knows anyone who got the virus. Mm-hmm. So, of course, it's not a lie, and I know it happens, and I know Wuhan got hit hard, and I know doctors from Guiyang that had to travel there to give their service to Wuhan.
Yeah,
But in
50,000
Guizhou, it was
doctors.
not hard. Yeah, like it just, they all have their own stories, but it was not so bad where I'm staying. So I was feeling very safe staying here and coming back. So after my 14 days of quarantine, actually things got better, and they started opening shopping malls, and they started, like, things slowly going back to normal. So but to get into any public place, we had to scan the QR code. If you had a green or a yellow, you could go in. If you had an orange or a red or a purple, if you had an orange, you couldn't go in. If you had a red or a purple, you're probably gonna be picked up by the police or something to be locked down. So
is that still happening?
I understand.
Is that still happening? And what other measures are you seeing still in place?
We are not doing the QR codes anymore. They are just doing the temperature scan every day. But
and where they do that, going into any sort of shop or restaurant and place of work?
Yeah, any shopping mall, any big shopping mall, or any big supermarket. But small restaurants don't do it anymore. I think that stopped maybe 3 weeks ago, that we don't have to do it. It's not as serious anymore. We don't need to wear masks anymore, but people still do it because, they just, right. It's just like we got used to it. It's like wearing clothes.
And in Asia, I feel like it's always been like, if I had a cold, I would wear a mask in China because I want to protect other people. If I have to go to the grocery store, I don't want them getting my cold. Like this thought that I'm doing it for others, not for myself. This collective.
Yeah, and that's very different. That's very different, and it's very different with our culture.
Yeah.
And I know this because I had to train. I work with foreigners and Chinese, and I had to train them on cultural awareness, of course. So one of the things that is very interesting is how Chinese focus the way they embrace societies in a holistic way, right? Holistic way. They will look at everything and everyone, and they care about the community and where they are. Well, we are individuals. So in outside of China or Asian countries, I'm not going to say only China, it's just an Asian culture. They are used to live in big houses, or their different setups where they have to they have to see a lot of different people, and they are used to taking care of each other. While in Western countries, we work hard for our own, for my family, and then when they are older, they have to do it themselves, and I'm not responsible for you anymore, which is very different. So culturally, I think this different, in the approach we have to this situation is very, very different. So me as a foreigner in China, I do have to follow the way they work. I do need to follow the way they behave. And I think that's, of course, I'm part of their community. It's not that I cannot change them, which at this point, I think it's better than the way we are facing these situations. But I think for
now,
I lost my thought here, but
I totally get your point about how kind of people are culturally conditioned to think of the society prioritize it over the individual. In Asian countries. And it is really interesting how that's borne out in so many ways. I also wanted to ask, and I'm worried it may cut off our recording in an hour. I can't remember, but one other question I wanted to ask is, here there's obviously a lot of talk about the various vaccines that are being developed, the big race for a vaccine. And some people are just refusing. They're adamant. They think they're going to have a chip implanted in them where the government's going to track them. And then others like me, who I will be the very first person volunteering for a vaccine. But I'm curious how they're going to administer that. In China, are they saying that people will be required to get it? And if so, how, or do you know yet? Is there talk of it?
No, I haven't heard of anything. What the thing that started was going back to school, because schools in different cities have started in the past few weeks, maybe 2 weeks ago. I know areas in Kunming and the south of China started 2 weeks ago, which Guizhou is different. We just started last week, which it's very strange because we had very low cases in the data. So it was a little bit hard, but I don't know, for some reason this province did very well on taking care of all the coronavirus situation. What I know for sure is teachers in general, before we start classes, we have to take the coronavirus test, the mucus test. So
have you taken that yet?
Not yet. Apparently, my company had been keeping track of everyone who has left and who has stayed, and kept the exit and entry bureau updated about everything weekly. So they have not required my company in Guijo to do it, but they have required other cities and other companies to do it, because they have not been very cautious about where people have been. So I think that's something that we have to do. We do have to take the test. I don't know, like I haven't heard about anything about vaccines. And
is it a source of controversy or even conversation
no,
at all right now?
Nothing yet. You know, I think like China, and that's what I think it's very funny when people outside of China worry about the government looking at your information and overlooking what you do on your computer and so on, which I understand, but I think we're overlooked by other companies anyway. No, I'm not gonna mention real particular companies, but you know, when you're looking at something and then suddenly something adds up. And I don't think it's a mystery or a coincidence that I'm chubby and I'm always getting diets and, you know, plans of how to lose weight. You know, I know they're tracking my moves, and I understand this. And this happens outside of China.
Oh, so, God. You know, here in the US, you'll look at a pair of shoes, and then every site you look at after that, there's an ad for those shoes. I mean,
exactly.
Yeah.
And I don't think, like, for me, I understand people worrying about the government looking at your data. But when the government, like, which I think in China is still, of course, I'm not going to say they're great and everybody had their own agendas, but at least they are not profiting from your information. And I think that's very important. You know, outside, even in Mexico, I look for a sushi on Uber Eats, and then I'm getting, like that you said, all these restaurant advertisements that I didn't even care about. So that is a private company who profits of this information, profiting out of you and giving you, you know, all this, filtering all this to you. What is worse? The government filtering this, or an individual or a company who has a profit in their mindset or something? I don't know. For me, I think I'd rather have the government filtering this. So I don't know. It's just like, again, it really depends on the government. If it's a Mexican government, I'll be like, oh my God, no. But in China, I don't feel so bad. And I know a lot of my friends also have been complaining, like, oh, you know, they have cameras sending everywhere. They shouldn't be monitoring your moves. But I feel so much safer in China, when I can walk at 3 a.m. on the street, 2 a.m. on the street, not like I do it every night, but nothing's gonna happen. I cannot imagine myself walking at 2 a.m. by myself on the street of Sonora or on the street of Dallas and feeling safe. So I think for me, this is more important. You know, like, are you gonna monitor? Great, monitor me. I don't care. As long as I feel safe and I know I'm not gonna get shoot at, robbed, or mugged, or hit, or rape, or whatever on the street. You know, like, when I put things on the balance, I think for me this is way more important to feel safe, and that's like the freedom I talk about, because that's also something, especially Americans. It's like, oh, I'm free to do this. I am entitled to my freedom and the freedom of my opinion and all that. And I know, because I work with people from different countries,
right?
And I think, like, we abuse it. And yes, your freedom is yours, but as long as it doesn't get involved with me, then it shouldn't be a problem. And I think that's when we lose a little bit of perspective. So I feel more free in China if I can go and walk and do anything and nobody's gonna hurt me, than in other places where I know I should not be here at certain time because it's dark. So That, I think that for me is very important.
I feel like you've been really honest about your feelings on that. And when I've talked to you about this over the years, I feel like you don't agree with everything about China. And you seem comfortable saying, hey, I don't like that they do this, but I do like that they do that. And, I think there's a lot of people who think, gosh, you're not allowed to. Now, I know you're not going to go and protest with a sign. I mean, I personally, that's something
that's not my style.
Right. But I personally like the ability to protest. So it saddens me that that's something that isn't as free for people in China to do. That said, you're allowed to have that opinion and nobody's going to come knocking at your door saying you're not allowed to say that, you're not allowed to tell anybody. You've been very clear and open with me on what you like and don't like about the government.
Yeah. And I feel like everywhere in the world, nothing's perfect. Nobody's perfect. No system is perfect. And as I said, politicians will always have agendas. So
sure.
I understand. But I do have these meetings and these courses or trainings with people, and I explain them, what's the difference. And, it's not better or worse. It's just different. So we need to understand that. And it's not like you're going to accept everything that comes from China. And I also not going to accept everything from the US, or I'm not going to accept everything from Mexico. We just need to understand that things are different. And that's the life and the time we're living. So things that happen now, we would have not imagined in 50 years ago.
Right.
So, of course, things are different, and this is the time we're living. So I think I don't compromise, but I think it's important to be respectful.
Sure. Yes, I agree. And we're seeing, I remember when Dr. Lee first came out in China trying to let people know what was happening, and his voice was suppressed and he died. And then there's another doctor who, anyway, and then they came out apologizing and basically making a hero of him, and people saying, see, that was a mistake. But here in the US, obviously we've got look, there was a citizen killed this week by law enforcement, which never should have happened. We made a big mistake, and it's not the first time it's happened. And we've got to figure this out and stop police brutality, particularly against people of color. And it shows a mistake and weakness in our own system, that we have mistakes and we have strengths. And as you said, every government does. And in this case, China's very organized system, their approach to coronavirus, even though there are still cases happening, they overall, a lot of people don't believe the data coming out of China, despite the fact that most people like you, like the Chinese, have ways of getting around anything that's not supposedly used in China, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or anything else. If you really want to do it, people know how to do it. That's all I'll say about that. And then most doctors in China are in communication with doctors outside of the US. I can't say that in North Korea, but I can in China. And they're sharing what they see and know. So the people I know feel like there are no exact numbers even in the United States, but that the data coming out of China, whether it's exact or not, most doctors seem to believe that the data they're getting is at least as accurate as what's coming out of the United States. So,
I think at this point, and I did say this before, what's the problem with it? And I did have this conversation with my friend who is in Spain, and she's a doctor, and she was just very upset, and she was telling me, like, how is it that Chinese have this data, they're lying? And I said, well, how does this affect you as a doctor in Spain that the Chinese data is wrong? You should not care about the Chinese data. You should care about the data in your country where you are right now. Because if, 1 million person happen to die anywhere else, you can know a big picture. But if the measures are not being taken according to the numbers that you have right now, where you are right now, that why are they so upset? But this is what I don't understand. And I do understand that we want to be truthful and we not want to know the reasons. And this is how we're going to prepare.
And to learn from each other.
And then learn from each other. But let's be honest. Did the US learn from the precautions that China took for the virus?
It's such a good point.
Did it matter that the numbers were good or bad?
Or that we saw people wearing hazmat suits and masks? We're not doing that as the way in China was.
Exactly. Chinese closing the borders, because I know Wuhan got completely isolated and people could not go in and people could not go out. And this is part in China, in mainland China, that people could not move. So some people had to stay there, you know, like somebody said to me, it was basically like Hiroshima style, you know, like you cannot get out of this region because you might be contaminated. You have to stay there. So that was not a secret. That was not, you know, something that was not told to the rest of the world. When I was in Europe, all I could see in the news was like people wearing masks, streets were empty. That was not a secret. If the numbers are different, or if the numbers are good or they're wrong, they're just numbers. What matters is the action that people took out of these numbers, and that's not going to affect you. So for a president or, you know, like an official to say, oh, they lied to me, the numbers were different, that's just, I see an excuse for people to cover their lack of preparations or assertiveness to follow this problem. So like, that's what I told my friend, you know, I know one of my mom's friends, Spain, got the coronavirus on a concert. In China, we were not even allowed to go to the supermarket. And people did not complain about it. People just say like, okay, we have to stay home. We're going to stay home. So you're getting the coronavirus in a concert. That just, to me, that's wrong. You know, like you're not taking care of yourself. Why is China's fault? So I just like, that's just something that I don't understand. Like, it's okay. The numbers might be wrong. They might be right. They're just numbers. People who really know the truth, we're not going to know it right now. And I feel like 20 years from now, 30 years from now, we're going to be looking at a documentary and a lot of things are going to be explained. But for you and me right now, what can we do about it?
Right.
Yeah. So like,
do you anticipate being able to travel at all in the next year outside of China?
I don't want to. That's the problem.
And you know, like to travel. I know you like to travel, but yeah.
So, no, I feel safer in China right now.
Yeah. So, and commerce seems to be moving on and things seem to be people coming, going, buying, working, all of that.
Yeah. People in mainland China can move around now. We can travel in China. Now the problem is with foreigners because, you know, Chinese, their population is massive. And there was a problem with this Nigerian guy escaped in Guangzhou, escaped the hospital, and he was COVID positive, and he escaped, and he infected a few people from a community. So the idea was like, oh, the foreigners don't listen, which of course makes sense to believe this kind of behavior. So I know all Africans, regardless their nationality, all Africans had to get quarantined again for 15 days.
Oh, wow.
This was not a very, you know, widely spread news because people didn't want to get in trouble, but it happened. I also know like there was a family of Mexicans living in Guangzhou area that got evacuated from the community. They were not allowed to go into the community, but it was not from the government. It was from the people from the community who didn't let them in. So things like this happen. And of course it's racism, and I understand, and it's not all right, but we are in their land. And it's, you know, it's
their rules.
If they want to, you know, they're the rules, and you need to play the game, and that's it. But other than that, when I've been traveling, because if you've seen my pictures, I travel a couple of times in my safe province. We just have to make sure that we bring a document that only foreigners need to bring this document, that we've been in China and where we live, and that we have already been clear from our quarantine, and that's it. So, which I think makes no sense because in March, China closed their borders and foreigners from any nationality cannot come in. So since March until now, which is, you know, almost June, 2 months, there are no new foreigners coming into China. So we are not the risk. We're not spreading anything. But other, you know, university students that have been studying abroad, coming back, those are the people who might have some viruses bringing it from outside. So there are still places that do not allow foreigners to go in. Some bars, some clubs, some restaurants that feel paranoid. And I know it's ignorance, but it just happens,
Well,
like it's not something good.
And even in the United States, we're seeing that there are certain rules that have been criticized or arbitrary on how things are being handled. Of course, every state is different, but as an example, this month we opened tanning salons and roller skating rinks before we opened Department of Public Safety. For people need licenses to get their jobs and to be able to drive and support their families. But your tanning salon was open, and I understand that the people who own tanning salons need to be open and make a living too. But if you look at the logic, but DPS employs a lot of people and provides the ability to. So we've had our own spotty ways the rules have been. And they're trying their best, obviously, and there's pressure from all sorts of groups to keep the economy going, and how that works. It has not been consistent here. Every place.
That's also something interesting because, of course, the economy gets affected, and I feel that is something cultural that makes China very different from, I would say, the U.S. and Mexico. When the virus hit, people start worrying about debt and the economy. In China, I think it was at least from February that all the rent on any commercial rent, I guess. So any, like the rent of any business or schools or whatever, because they cannot operate, the government had made the owners forgive the rent. So February, a lot of places didn't have to pay the rent. So restaurants, shopping malls, stores, they didn't pay the rent for that month. For month of March, they could apply for it. So I think that's something that doesn't happen in Western countries. And I'm not sure if it does. And I'm not sure if it did.
So what we did is we had various federal programs where you could apply and the government would give you the money as a gift if you used it to pay payroll and your business lease. Not everybody got it, and it was not consistently applied. And there are some issues with it, but the government did do it and did work quickly. They actually did 2 rounds of it, but not everybody got it. And I know we're coming up on a time limit here. So I just want, almost. So, that we have had programs, but it's not finished yet. And again, because we've got different states that are fairly autonomous. Yeah.
But I think what I cannot see the economy affected as badly here as I can hear from people outside of China, which I don't know. I don't even understand why. I think Chinese people don't use credit cards as much as we do, and I think that's why they're better than us. So that's just one thing that comes with that. I don't know if you have any other questions before the time runs.
So you don't know when you're going to travel outside of China again, or when you're coming back to Mexico. That would be the main thing, or the U.S. Because I hope to see you soon.
Well, I cannot go to the U.S. either, so that's harder. I don't want to swim.
Right. Yeah. Well, anyway, thank you so much for answering all these questions. I miss you. I hope we get to see you soon. And
you're welcome.
And
who knows?
I'm hoping for a vaccine quick and that we're able to travel. That's my big hope. But anyway, we're finding ways to engage and do some great things in different countries, just having to do it through our coordinators, people like you, instead of our volunteers, since that's what we've got right now. All right. Well, hey, Miriam, thank you again. And I hope we're in touch really soon. Thank you.
Hey, you're welcome.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.